Hey everybody, Brett Tadlock here, TN Artist. Just wanted to jump in here today and going to work on a paint over for one of my patrons over on Patreon. The whole reason I do these videos and doing the stuff over on Patreon is because I want to try and help as many people as possible learn how to do painting, be it for digital painting or whatever, but primarily digital painting, but really just painting in general. And one of my patrons is working on a piece that he submitted into the messages and everything else, talking about everything. And he put in there, he's like, hey, I'm trying to learn some stuff and got some feedback on some things. And it was based off of his initial, I guess, inspiration was my painting that I did on Kilauea, the Kilauea volcano lesson that I did. And it made him think of like a smelting iron pit or some kind of thing like that, and he'd gotten some feedback on it and had thrown it in there. So I asked him if he minded if I gave some feedback as well and maybe did a paint over of it. He graciously said yes, and I just want to thank him not only for that but also having the courage to say, hey, I'm learning this stuff, open to feedback, needing some direction and everything else as well. So this is his image, and I'm going to work on it, trying to not only show him but show everyone else some ideas for how to maybe make it read a little better, give a little bit more story to it, and just kind of get a more coherent image. But that's the whole reason, like I said, I started doing all this was because I wanted to be able to help people, and I know it can be a nerve-wracking thing to ask for help or to get any kind of feedback on stuff. And so I appreciate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with maybe kind of tightening up and changing some of these, perspective and stuff, because it's all kind of off a little bit, because you can see like right here it's kind of going down and here it's going down. So this would really be almost kind of a 2-point perspective. So we can really work on fixing that as well and kind of going through it. So I'm going to show some quick tips. Now there are, the perspective tools and stuff here in ArtRage and in other programs. I think just about all of them have it now, where you can use those if you're just new to doing perspective and drawing and everything else. But, you get to a point where you can just eyeball it as well. And that's kind of what I'm going to do here, just because I don't feel like loading up all the tools and everything else. But I'm just going to kind of play around with some of the stuff here and kind of go over it. Some things that I think could really change. Now, some of the stuff in this I really like. I like the idea and the concept of this pit coming up here and kind of, going around and maybe these stairs going up, which gives it some interesting scale for what could be being forged here and stuff. And the bushes and everything here, and this down here is kind of interesting to me. It's like, well, what is that? Is that where the iron is coming out, or is that some sort of entrance to where stuff is being forged, or what and what's going on? So there's some interesting stories here and kind of stuff. So let's play around with it a little bit. So one of the things I think we need to do is kind of start off first with the perspective. And I'm going to start with this because this is our main area. So we've got kind of this oval shape here. One of the easiest ways to get your ovals is to use like the lasso tool, or to use, like there's oval stencils in ArtRage, and then try to figure out. So if you look at this circle like it was the top of a cup, okay, so this is a great way. If you have a cylinder drinking glass, you can kind of use it and tilt it for where your eye would be. So if we wanted to be looking almost straight at it, it would be here. And then as we kind of move up above it and we're looking down, you can see how the oval changes. And the same if we were, down below it and looking up, so that we're kind of that way. So this front section is kind of the front of the cylinder area. So I'm thinking for here, if we want to have this kind of just slightly below eye level, I'm thinking right about here could be a good way to do it. And give us kind of that neat look. So there's that moment when your recording system just totally fizzes out and you don't keep what you were just saying. Anyway, so what I did was I went ahead and laid out where that top of that would be, then filled it in, and then took the rectangular selection tool and went to the edges of the sphere, straight down, boom, cylinder. And then on top of that, wanted to have to where the fire pit would be, and I just took this cylinder, duplicated it, slid it up, kept it in perspective, and that's just a matter of keeping it proportionally the same to this one. So that way we could see where that's at. And it's like, okay, so now we've got our flame, so we want to see what that is. Look, it's a big candle. So it gives us an idea for, all right, there's our main focus. We can play around with the look and everything else. Want to come in and add the steps and this dome looking thing here. So just a matter, again, sphere and a couple of random shapes to kind of smooth it out, and then some angled shapes to kind of go on the stairs here. Really just make one side, flip it over, do the other side. And now we've got a beginning of our story and structure here. And so after that, it's just a matter of taking and making a somewhat in perspective rectangle here. And this was just drawing shapes and then moving them down, stretching them and twist. These aren't perfect. They're off. This shouldn't be angling in a little bit. It should actually be straighter right about here. You can fix that really quickly by just grabbing the selection tool and actually using the one that you meant to. So if I just bring this to here, see how that's off right here. So that's what I would want to fix. Not going to worry about it right now, but that's how you'd fix it, because you want all of your verticals should be vertical and all of your horizontals should be horizontal, and then your angles of perspective drop off from those points. Okay, so I've got that. Well, then what about the background stuff? So if I were laying this out, I would say, okay, I want some mountains perhaps, maybe a bit of a nighttime sky, and then maybe some forest and stuff like he's got on there. Now, this is obviously a very, very simplified version of what he had. But you can see by having it here, that starts to read for what we've got going on. Okay. And so we start to see some of the angles that look better, some of the story that reads. And if you zoom it out, it's like, okay, I can tell something coming up, some sort of structure here, big fire here, doorway down there, woods, mountains, and all that kind of stuff. So that would give us our layout, and that's going to help fix a lot of the issues that were here in the original, which again, not a bad place to start. You could even, for example, Matthew, if you did this and laid it out, I should really drop all these in a folder like I meant to earlier. If you started here, that's not a bad place to start. Okay. But by doing all these simple geometric shapes, you can kind of see, how you're going to have a better read to it. Now, again, if you're doing something that's surrealistic, all these twisted and turns don't matter. So it really kind of depends on what you're trying to do. Okay. So one of the things I would do, start out, is get your shapes down. You don't have to do all these different shapes like I just did. You can easily just sketch those and go around with them and just play around with them. So that way you've got it. Okay. So you could get all those shapes and have it like you want, and then you'd be good to go for the perspective and for the look of it. So start with a simple drawing like this, and that will dictate how your steps look. That'll dictate how the platform looks. That'll dictate all of these things through here. Okay. And go from there. But let's talk about some of the different elements here that could help with trying to transform this. So assuming you've got your perspective done, assuming you've got all that taken care of, what would be next? So how would you paint this to look better? Okay. And some of the stuff that he had mentioned when he, that he got feedback was, like stuff like missing smoke and sparks and highlights on the environment. Structures are vague, and misaligned would be the perspective. So the vague and all that stuff can come about. But I do want to talk about some of the different aspects of the fire, the sparks, the smoke, and all that kind of stuff. So one of the key things here is that all of these are soft edges. all of these here. So it almost gives it that look of this is all in a fog. And that may have been what you're going for, trying to get a smoke feel. But instead it has kind of almost you're squinting at it kind of feel like it's out of focus. And there's no sharp place for your eyes to land. So you're just going to kind of keep floating around. You should always have a good entry point to a painting. These stairs act as it. They're almost pointing directionally up into here. So they're almost pointing like this. So you've got stairs that are pointing into here, which tells you a story. So if you're looking at this, you're probably going to enter from around here, come up and see, and that may bring you down to here. And then that may bring you back to kind of circling around. Okay. And if that's the case, you want to emphasize this more. So, how can we play around with that and get kind of the fire here? It looks hot. You've done that really well. So you've got it kind of transitioning from the really light to the dark. I don't know that it would blast out like this. More than likely this fire should be kind of, even if it was kind of a jet fire, it would still be coming like this. Okay. You will get flare outs like that in a fire, like in a forge, like you were thinking, a smelting forge or something. But it's going to do that usually if there's something sitting here that's diverting the flame around it. Okay. So it's usually going, but if there's not, fire is kind of like water. It's going to seek the path of least resistance. And that's going to usually be in a cone like, okay. So something to consider. So I would say lose this out here so that it's not kind of flaring out. It's not a water spout, so it's not going to gush out. All right. So you want to have it instead just kind of coming up straight through it. With the edges, I would take your next to brightest color and I would create some very distinctive edges through. Okay, that's going to give you that brightness. Right? And then just kind of fade it off into some of your different colors, and you could fade it off even into some of these colors. I would say for these, also for these arches and stuff, I would imagine if you think storytelling wise, these would probably be metal or stone, because that much heat is going to set anything up here on fire. Okay, but having those areas of bright light here gives you a place to stand. This also, if this is liquid, like say a liquid metal, this should be reflected down into, okay, but that's only going to reflect that much if it's kind of again, a watery silver metallic type structure. But you want it, now one of the easy ways to do a reflection digitally is just copy that, flip it upside down, and then swipe across it. Okay. But I'm thinking, well, what if this were like hot slag? You could look at furnaces like those big, there's some wonderful pictures you can find online of like smelting plants and stuff that are doing this. But some of this, like through here, you got a beautiful stuff here with the rocks. Okay. I would probably take some of that, and again, keeping your cylinder, assuming you've got your cylinder laid out, maybe kind of cast some of these into here. So you've got kind of this, where the metal's cooling, and you've got like where it's hot, and you could just kind of play it around, have it kind of come around and do some of that. If that's what this is, if this is all cooling metal. If it's not, like say it's just metal or something like that, then I would just go with a different kind of viewpoint of graying this down on the edges and just kind of softening it. Again, keeping your perspective, but then once you've got it kind of softened, this will kind of come around like so. So you're still going to keep some of that look, but it may not be as bright as a reflection would be. Because remember, the more this is copied here, the more this is going to look like water and reflection like stuff. So, but if it's a flat metal or something like that, you could easily just kind of come across and get that sheen for it. So kind of a dull gray that then just lightens out as you get there. Having that there is going to kind of really brighten this up. So if you want this to look like a really blasting furnace, everything around here needs to be darker. So in other words, all of this space around here needs to darken out. Okay, so that makes that instantly brighter. And the brighter it is, the more it's going to seem like the hotter it is. Okay, so something to consider there. And then kind of along the same lines, for your door down here, I would probably, on the inside of it, maybe make it a little bit darker, like so. That may be a little too dark, to be honest, but something like that. And again, going with the really bright edges, and the same for the really dark, because again, if this is all dark, it's got kind of a better vibe to it. Okay, so those are things to think about with some of that. Okay, so like if this was you had your structure back here again, let me just hide this file. So if I had this here, coming out like so, a little bit of my structure here, a little way here, stuff kind of blasting across here. This is going to really drop off into darkness, and this will always curve this way, so your strokes need to go similar on each side. So I've got that blasting through there, I've got that blasting through there, I've got smoke kind of so something like that. These are going to get darker down here as it goes away. Defined edge. Same with this, even if you're doing the crenulations. Let's see how that can start to play against it. Anyway, so if you've got that blasting up through there, you are going to have sparks more than likely. So sparks can be just a matter of adding in some of the same color. So I would just go with like, could just add in some shapes, because even if they're squares like these, they would still read, can still read as sparks. I'm using the hard out smear. You've got those coming up. Got those really blasting up through there and stuff. Anyway, like a hot mess. Anyway, that may have been a little bit all over the place, but hopefully you guys got something out of it. You know, I wanted to share that not just on Patreon for Matthew to see, but also here on YouTube as well, where this is going to be posted for everybody to see here and hopefully get something out of it. I just wanted to break it down to the basics of the shapes, then think about your edges, then think about your values of light to dark and dark to light, so that way you can get the heat of something like a fire and make it look really hot. And then just different aspects of the storytelling for the image and that kind of stuff. So, things to think about, things to chew on. Matthew, again, thank you for sharing this and allowing me to kind of poke through it and give some ideas and some thoughts. Hopefully this was a good learning lesson for everybody. If you have questions, if something wasn't clear, leave me feedback, leave me questions and stuff, either here on YouTube or over on Patreon, where this will be shared as well. So take care. Have a great rest of the day, evening, morning, or whatever it is, wherever you're at, and keep creating.